to me, money is something that leverages the value of other people's independent action.
I'm going to go back to 2017. How did the fork affect you?
Yeah, well, that was very much a moment of very deep pain and injury for me because, I believed that intelligent minds would come through, and I thought that the miners would not want to split and would understand that they are being scammed with all of the SegWit stuff. Unfortunately, they did not do that. So I think in Bitcoin, we have a game that's very much like the handicap game, and the Bitcoin miners are hermaphrodites in this game because they're both doing the female role and the male role. If you don't have scaling, you cannot have independent action because you're just constantly bumping into other people when you're trying to make these transactions. As people continue to push their NFT protocols further, they're going to learn more and more that BSV is really the only way to do it.
Hi, Daniel. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you. I'm doing good, and nice to meet you, Naka and Moto.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, so we have a series of questions. I got 10 questions for you. Here's the number one. In 2013, maybe earlier, I'm not sure, but at least in 2013, you were referred to as the Bitcoin Emperor.
Okay, no, that's not true because I didn't invent the Bitcoin Emperor until 2017 when I started doing Bitcoin videos on YouTube. And before that, I was just Daniel Krawisz. So what happened was some friends and I started the Nakamoto Institute, which was just a website where we archived a bunch of Satoshi Nakamoto posts, and we did blogs on there. And we did that because at this time in 2013, people were already trying to forget Satoshi Nakamoto. So we thought he was important and we wanted to make him more accessible. But then the Nakamoto Institute was taken over. So my friends all joined the BTC core cult. And so I left that and I started doing my YouTube channel. And the reason I came up with the Bitcoin Emperor idea is that an emperor is a ruler of multiple nations. So the thing that I thought was really crazy right about then was how much people wanted to take sides in the Bitcoin conflict. And of course, I certainly didn't think that the big blocks made any sense, but that doesn't mean that I would think that what did I say? No, small blocks are bad. Did I say that wrong? No, I thought that small blocks were the dumbest thing that you could possibly imagine, but that didn't mean that the big blockchain was automatically going to do better. So, and also, there was also the possibility that one of the bad chains was going to get better. So we're starting to see some of that in BTC now because of the ordinals craze. Now there's another movement to increase the block size over there. So the emperor is a ruler of multiple nations. So what I was saying is that since you don't really know who's going to win long term, it's probably a bad idea to take sides too early. So that's the point of the Bitcoin Emperor.
But they called you the Bitcoin Emperor, so they took.
Well, I made that up. They got it. Yeah, they got it from me.
Right. Okay. How did you get to know Bitcoin for the first time? And what could you give us your big Bitcoin background? How did you come across it, and how did you fall in love with it?
Yeah, well, I learned about it from Ross Ulbricht when he was inventing the Silk Road.
What directly?
So, yeah. So
You actually met Ross.
Yeah.
Was Pirate Roberts? Was he?
Yeah, that's who he was later, but I didn't know. I didn't know that his idea. Well, I went to an event called 3-Day Startup, and this is for people to get involved in startup culture. So the idea is you get a bunch of young people together, and they're going to try to form a bunch of startups over the weekend. So just some kind of idea, and try to get some people involved in it, and just try to put together a simple but real company over the weekend. And so Ross Ulbricht was one of the participants, and he was pitching people on Bitcoin. And at that time, he couldn't really explain, he couldn't answer my questions about it, because what I was saying were things like, is there a fixed supply? Like, how does the economics work? And he didn't know any of that stuff. So I was saying, so my argument, this was 2009.
Jesus Christ! Wow.
So anyway, he didn't sell me on Bitcoin. I didn't understand what the point was, and he pitched to everybody on the Silk Road at the 3-Day Startup, but we didn't know that the idea was that it was going to be a dark web illegal market. He was pitching it as a market with Bitcoin. And so that was when he was developing the idea. And then later on it came out, and I didn't realize that this was the same person who was doing the Silk Road until after he got caught. So in 2014, I think. So that was when I first heard about Bitcoin. So I didn't really get involved. I didn't get interested. Well, I was interested, but I just decided to keep an eye on it. But I didn't jump in right away. But then later on, a couple years later, then then I started to learn more about it, and there was there's trading being done on Mt. Gox. So it was easier to see that there was something going on with it, and that's kind of when I got started on it. Once I could see there was an actual market going on. So, well, basically, my argument was Ludwig von Mises's regression theorem says that in order to become money, in order to become a medium of exchange, a good must have some other value, not as a medium of exchange first. And so I didn't understand what that would be, given that Bitcoin is a purely digital good that has it's really not good for anything other than as a medium of exchange. So that seemed to contradict what I knew about economics. So that was my argument that it didn't work. But once there was a market, I could see that there was something wrong with my argument. So I was thinking if it was growing from here, it would be easier for it to grow later on as it got bigger, because it would turn into a better market as it grew. But unfortunately, we've seen that most of the people who got involved in Bitcoin want to ruin it, or can be easily tricked into destroying it without understanding what they're doing. So growth is a lot more difficult than I had imagined originally.
Cool. Thank you.
So where do you foresee in this growth of this adoption rate for Bitcoin? Could you imagine that at that time?
Sure. I mean, the thing about the Austrian theory of money is that, money is like it's called a focal point in game theory. It's like something that is an arbitrary choice, but once it gets chosen, then it's difficult to unchoose it. So the best money is the one that everybody else uses. It's not because it has particular, some goods, certain properties make it easier for certain goods to be used as money. But once a good becomes money, then it's much better as money than other goods that might potentially be better as money. But as if there is a money economy that is growing relative to other monies, then it becomes better as it grows, and this is due to the network effect. It's about the other connections that you can make with the money. Excuse me. It's about the other people who are using the money. So if there's more of them, then that makes it a better money. So, what we would imagine, assuming that people aren't going to act completely insane, which is subsequently what they did, we would think that growth would stimulate more growth, and that it would get easier as it got bigger. So those were my thoughts when I first saw the market in Bitcoin, which I mean the market on Mt. Gox. But I knew there was more. There were other places selling stuff for Bitcoin. It wasn't very big, but at least it existed.
We now listen quite often to the term Bitcoinization.
Hyper-Bitcoinization.
Is that a term that you came up with?
Yes. In 2013, Conrad Graf wrote some blog posts about hyper-monetization, and that is the inverse of hyperinflation. So a money good can rapidly lose its money status, and we've seen this happen many times in the past. And this is called hyperinflation. Well, hyperinflation is one way that can happen, but Conrad Graf also coined the term hyper demonetization, because there's other ways that money can be destroyed. So hyper demonetization would include hyperinflation, but also some other possibilities. And so then hypermonetization is the opposite, the inverse effect. That would be something that rapidly monetizes. So it's a medium of exchange that few people use one day, and then everybody uses it the next day. And so I wrote a blog post about hyper-Bitcoinization, which would be the hyper-monetization of Bitcoin. And that was, I would say that I wrote it as kind of a guided, imaginative experiment, because to me, something that was missing in the Bitcoin economy at the time was the idea of growth. So people were not thinking about an economy that was much, much bigger than the one we have now. And so that's kind of what I wanted to convey with it. But, unfortunately at the time, I didn't really understand that there were so many bad actors around, and that people would just use the meme of hyper-Bitcoinization to pump the coin without actually, trying to think about like, how do we achieve growth? That's basically what happened with that. So now that idea has become part of the BTC religion, and people talk about it all the time. And you should look at the Slictionary hyper-Bitcoinization trailer, because they've just got me to define the hyper-Bitcoinization on Slictionary, and they're going to do an auction for who's going to own the income from that particular word. So anyway, that's upcoming. So I'm going to go through all of that stuff that I just said in the definition.
And when do you see this hyper-Bitcoinization happening, if ever?
Well, yeah, it depends. So I think hyper-monetization would happen because there is hyperinflation happening somewhere else. So as long as there is a form of money that is working okay, people don't really have a good reason to switch to a new form of money, even if that new money would, in theory, be much better than the one they're using now, because in the short term, it's a lot worse. But if we had a situation where the money that everybody was using was rapidly becoming worse, then that would make it a lot easier for them to want to switch to something else. So the way that hyperinflation works is that so there's somebody printing more money, so that we don't have a fixed supply, and we don't have there isn't a cap on supply, or something preventing the supply from being increased easily. So there's somebody who can do this costlessly, and this can be used to live as a parasite on the rest of the economy. So basically, if you print money, if you print twice as much money as what currently exists, then you can basically buy half of the economy with it before people get wise to it and the prices of everything goes up. So it's basically a way of getting stuff for free. And so that's what we have with the central banks. And but eventually what happens is that people, well, so the inflators, the parasites, they get addicted to the new money. So they get to a point where they can't control themselves. They can't stop because they're too dependent on just taking whatever they want whenever they feel like it. So, and at the same time, the regular people start to do a better job anticipating the inflation of the money supply. And that means that the rate of price inflation happens differently as time goes on. So when this starts, inflating the money supply has a very delayed effect. But as time goes on, it doesn't have a delayed effect anymore. People figure out that it's going on, and they figure out that they need to start charging more for things right away.
And
so then
it accelerates more and more with time. That's what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So eventually there gets to be a point where there's a positive feedback that is so strong that the prices are rising so quickly that nobody can do anything about them. Everybody needs to spend all of their cash as soon as they earn it, and nobody wants to hold cash, and the value of the money collapses. And while that's hyperinflation, and while that's happening, then it's a really good idea to start figuring out some new money to start using. And so I think that would be an opportunity for a hyper monetization event for people to start switching to something else. But right now, what we've seen is that people really don't have any good idea about what makes a good money. And all of the people who got into BTC really don't know what makes a good money. So, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure that choosing the best money is really the one that would win out in this kind of scenario. But one thing I can say is that because of the lack of decentralization for all of these other monies, all of these other digital goods anyway, they're not people who are going to try to use them are not going to be able to build a very efficient economy. So I think we may have to in BSV we may have to contend with a small economy for a while, but we also have something that is that grows more easily and can be more efficient than what other people can have. So if we just wait for the rest of the economies to collapse, if we can last that long, then we're going to be in a really good position.
Because at least what you mean is that BSV can scale and take up all this volume of transactions. At least they have BSV has this capacity, and while other cryptocurrencies do not have that capacity. Is that what you mean?
Right. Well, yeah. So scaling, I mean, yeah, people talk about that a lot, but you know, what that really means, well, you know, the thing that money enables is independent action. Money is a form of cooperation on a vast scale. And what money gives us is a shared idea of efficiency. And so if we all have that, we can all do things that are sort of pro-social, that are pro growth. You know, if we're each growing ourselves, we're also growing everybody else through this shared concept of efficiency. But if you don't have scaling, you cannot have independent action, because you're just constantly bumping into other people when you're trying to make these transactions. So you know, to me, money is something that leverages the value of other people's independent action. So if you remember Immanuel Kant in the categorical imperative, he says that other people need to be treated as ends in themselves rather than as means only. And this is the difference between good and evil, that the evil people treat other people as ends, as tools, as things they want to control for, you know, whatever they want. But when we have a money economy, then you're much better off treating people as ends in themselves. And I don't know, it seems like that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about scaling, to me anyway, that we're all benefiting from each other's independent action. And so if we can't do that, then the people aren't very valuable. And I don't know, it just seems totally crazy to me, but it seems like people just don't understand that idea very easily.
So you are famous for promoting the handicap principle as a very important guide in economics and in life in general. Can you explain to us how this handicap principle works and why it is important in Bitcoin and in other domains?
Yeah, sure. So the handicap principle was first developed by Zahavi, and his idea is that the reason that animals develop well, he observed that animal communication seems to involve costly ornaments. So the biggest example is the peacock's tail. And his question was, why does the peahen like the peacock with his big tail, given that the tail makes the peacock a lot worse off? I mean, he's going to have a lot more difficult time getting around in life with the big tail. And yet she still wants him. She's attracted to the tail, and she wants her male children to inherit it. So what is going on with that? And his conclusion is that it is the fact that the tail is costly in a way that the peahen can easily assess that makes it an honest signal of the male's fitness. So what he said is that if the peacock did not have the tail, the females would have a much more difficult time figuring out who the best males are. And therefore, it's in the interest of the males to grow the tail, because then, it's in the interest of the top males, the best males, because then they can compete easily. So they can stand out against the worst males a lot more easily because they have the tail, and it's in the interest of the females because then they know who the top males are easily. And ultimately, it is in the interest of the less fit males to grow the tail as well, because if they don't have one, then the females aren't interested in them at all. Whereas if they do, then they get some interest from females, even if it's not as much as the top males get. So there's other applications of the handicap principle, because there's other ways that animals communicate, but the male contest for females, that's kind of like the classic one. So another common pattern is also about males and females, but it's about males communicating to each other. So that's kind of like the deer antlers or horns, or and these kind of signals allow the males to assess one another's strengths without killing each other in battle as much. So it allows for contests of strengths that you can get away from and live to fight another day.
And how is this principle applied to Bitcoin?
Oh yes. So while we have the we have the proof of work in Bitcoin, and this is a handicap because it is provable waste. So you can look at the hash, and as long as the SHA-256 is a cryptographic hash function, then you can estimate the cost that it took. While relative to the other hashes, you can estimate the cost of producing it. And so we get a ranking of all of the Bitcoin miners, just like in a herd or in a flock of peacocks. And so I would say, and the one that wins the block first is the one that gets to transmit it to everybody else. So he gets to earn the income. So I think in Bitcoin we have a game that's very much like the handicap game that was described by Zahavi, and it's the Bitcoin miners are hermaphrodites in this game because they're both doing the female role and the male role, and it's like we have a contest between a bunch of hermaphrodites, and every round one of them is selected to be the male and everybody else is the female, and the male transmits his information to everybody else, and the block, that's like the baby, that's like the next generation.
Very interesting. So you have created a series of videos in YouTube called Homo Bitcoinus. Can you make here for us a summary of the theory described in your Homo Bitcoinus videos?
Yeah, well, so that's a joke, just like everything I do, pretty much. But the idea is that people in Bitcoin are acting crazy. So Homo Bitcoinus is like a future human that actually understands economics. And to me, that's the future of human evolution, is understanding economics. And to me, humans today are out of their element. And the human element was small tribes of 150 people or so. That's Dunbar's number. And as population sizes have grown, people have gone farther and farther outside of their understanding. And so right now in these societies with billions of people, it's like everybody doesn't know what they're doing or how to live in it. So Homo Bitcoinus is like a new kind of human that is comfortable in a population size of billions of people, and his Dunbar number is the size of the whole human population. So 10 billion is what I said in the video, but well, now I've heard that there might be a population crisis. So whatever the population is, all of the Homo Bitcoinuses, they're all friends with everybody else. So they have a small town global atmosphere where everybody knows everybody, and there's several billion of them. And they understand economics, so they're not acting crazy like everybody does in the current Bitcoin market. So they're able to connect their actions in the market to the rest of their lives and to the society as a whole. Whereas, I think most of the people in the market today are just kind of just acting like they're nuts, So those guys are going to die out, and then the new people are the ones who understand all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. And in your Twitter profile, it is written Daniel Krawisz, and mass scams with proof of work. What do you mean with
that? Okay. Yeah. So what I've been saying is that we can use proof of work for more than just in Bitcoin. And I think we have a big problem with the way that we transmit information to one another. So I've worked on a protocol that's called BoostPow that allows people to put proof of work in Bitcoin transactions, and it allows them to buy the proof of work from Bitcoin miners, and it allows them to attach the proof of work to any message that they want. And the reason that you would use this is to talk about what's important. And to me, like what we need, this is a step towards the billion people small world network, and it's the beginning of a gossip network that can be used over a very large population instead of a small town population. So what happens now is when people try to gossip to one another, we end up getting these nodes that become very important and very well connected, and all information tends to go through them. And this is a failure to produce the small world network. That then it's more like a hub and spokes network. And there's a big problem with when these well-connected hub nodes become corrupted and start spreading lies, because if the people are talking to are not well connected, it's difficult for them to know that they are being lied to, because they don't have an independent way of looking at the rest of the network to figure out what's really going on. So when we use work attached to messages, it's no longer being well connected no longer gives you an advantage over what information gets transmitted. So we end up with a single global contest over what information becomes prominent, and no node in the network has the ability to manipulate it. So, back when COVID-19 was going on, there was all this propaganda to say that the vaccines were safe and lots of other things, that they were poisonous. Were not able to get their message out. They were not able to talk to people about it. There was a lot of censorship. So if we were using this proof of work upvote system, that would not have happened, because people would not interact with information through these well-connected nodes like Facebook or YouTube or these other things. They would get a sample of everything across the whole internet, and anything could go viral from anywhere. It wouldn't be like this echo chamber where everybody who uses YouTube thinks that they think that the vaccines are safe, or whatever YouTube wants to promote. Whatever that YouTube says is misinformation gets deleted, and then they don't know about it. You see?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back to 2017, which was a very sad year for all Bitcoiners, I think. How did the fork affect you? And
yeah, well, that was very much a moment of very deep, deep pain and injury for me, because, I believe that intelligent minds would come through, and I thought that the miners would not want to split, and would understand that they are being scammed with all of the SegWit stuff. And unfortunately, they did not do that. So, but this was also a moment of, clarity, because it also was something that made me see that I knew a lot more than, most of the other people in this economy. So that also gave me some confidence to step forward and, step up my game, and try to talk to people a lot more. So that's when I started doing my Bitcoin Stuff show, which is not about economics. It's more about, it's just a different kind of thing. It's for treating insanity is what it's about. So today, I wish we could just talk about economics. That would be my preference, but I think we still have a lot of insanity. But maybe someday.
Have you, going back to that subject, of the guys who wanted the big blocks? I would count in Andreessen, Mike Hearn, and some others. Have you ever got to meet these guys?
Nope. I was doing, I didn't do a lot of conferences back then. I just did blogging. And so I don't, Mike Hearn hasn't showed up again, as far as I know. And but Mark Andreessen, I forgot who he is.
No, Mark, Gavin Andreessen, sorry.
Oh, that, right. Gavin, of course. Yeah. No, I did talk to him a little bit. He asked me for an endorsement for his proposal for increasing the block size. And so I said that was good, but unfortunately it didn't go through. Well, it's not as good. It wasn't as good as an unlimited block size. So that would have been better. So you could say that was unfortunate, but I'm glad we got an unlimited block size now. That's a lot better.
With going back to more recent times, with Taproot, basically, I think BTC have managed to increase the block size to 4 megabytes effectively. Enabling,
yeah, that happened with SegWit. The SegWit created the alternate part of the block that didn't exist before, and it created the concept of the block weight instead of the block size. So they have the same block size, even though now it's much bigger and it has a bigger block weight. I mean, yeah.
But that has enabled, the create the ordinals and basically the ability to stick NFTs up to 4 megabytes on the blockchain, which has created this new craze. And there's a new debate now about, will BTC scale or increase the block size? Do you think that's possible, or do you think that will ever happen?
Yes, it is possible, but it would require the miners to understand that the developers are not acting in their interest. So I'm not really sure how that's going, but it would require the miners to start developing the software of their own accord. And then that would require some idea about, the protocol being different from the software. And that would require, yeah, I guess it would require that idea. And so certainly some of those miners might be thinking things like that, but that's not really you know, that's not really what people think in BTC. That's not, at least that's not the public narrative right now. So there would need to be some kind of change in the way people think about the protocol. And they've really dug their heels in deep into some very silly ideas. So that's going to be difficult to get around. And it's kind of like, you know, you can't, if you're like a cult leader, you can't, you know, you always will make dumb decisions, or you not every decision is going to be bad. I mean, but eventually you make bad decisions, and then you can never go back on them because they will have hurt people a lot. And so then if you ever admit that it's a mistake, then people are going to start thinking like, you know, why am I listening to you in the first place? So if people ever start changing their ideas in BTC about, you know, some of these things about how Bitcoin works, that's really going to completely destroy the Bitcoin core cult. And, you know, they don't want that to happen. So, you know, they're going to keep fighting to protect their power, which means controlling the block size. And you know, there's a big conflict entail. But no, I don't think it's impossible. And you know, I think Josh Hensley made a video where he just said follow the money. I mean, yeah, if they increase the block size, that's where the money is going to be. And so it would be crazy not to. So he's predicting there will be a block size, but we'll see. I mean, it seems like the ordinals have been going on for a while, and nobody's increased the block size yet. So I don't know.
And this is the last question of the 10 long questions. How do you see the future of Bitcoin in its three main chains, BTC, BCH, and VSV, in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
I don't know. That's a really tough question. I mean, I certainly didn't predict the ordinal craze, but there's some really good things about it. In particular, you can do ordinals on all three of the chains. Mm-hmm. So there's a common protocol that they all can use, and that creates this common incentive. So in some way, the ordinals kind of bring the people of all of the three chains back together again, and that's a really good thing. Of course, what I would like to see is for these people to start thinking about the economics of their situation, but you know, I've come to accept that that'll never really happen. But I would say as people continue to try to push their NFT protocols further, they're going to learn more and more that BSV is really the only way to do it. And it's not just about scaling and about the block size, but there's also the legal nature of BSV, which is quite different from the other coins. And so you know, there's sort of this this big problem with changing the protocol in the other chains, whereas in BSV there is an independent definition of the protocol, so there isn't some kind of problem with increasing the block size. Whereas I think on BTC, if they increase the block size, then that would be a taxable event. And you know, as people try more and more, they're going to run up against more and more of these problems. So I don't know. I would like it if people were to try to think as far ahead as possible, but I think it seems like people are thinking about problems that are right in front of them. And so it's really only when it's really only when they actually encounter all of these problems for real that they're going to start acting like they really see that their choices are limited. You know what I mean?
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. And
So now I'm gonna make you just 10 questions, short ones, for more or less short answers. First one, is Bitcoin what our modern world needs to solve its problems?
Yes. So the problem that we have in the modern world is centralization. And Bitcoin solves that by showing people how to decentralize. And so Ludwig von Mises wrote about this back in this problem of socialism theory. And what he argued is that we can have a decentralized economy that uses capitalism and uses the profit and loss system in particular to enable people to coordinate without a central planner. Or we can have central planning. And if we have central planning, we do not have economic growth. We only have economic destruction. So there's really only one choice for Ludwig von Mises, and that is capitalism and decentralization. And so I talked about that earlier. So what I said is that a money system allows for independent action. And well, we have this problem of centralization with all of the other institutions that run everything in the world. We have a problem where there cannot be independent action because everything, at least in a certain domain, has to go through these institutions. And so with a money economy that operates in a decentralized way without having to go through the SWIFT network, for example, then we can escape our attachment to these institutions. And all of these centralized institutions are creating economic destruction, as Ludwig von Mises theorized. So if we can escape them, then we can have some really great economic growth that we can't have today.
Okay, and next question is, are you still in friendship with many of the earlier Bitcoiners that you met at the beginning of Bitcoin, who now are BTC maxis and maybe with laser eyes?
No, I don't like any of those guys. They're all no good. They're all anti-growth.
That's short and direct question answer. Yes. Do we live in capitalism or in other economic system right now?
Sure. Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, capitalism means different things to different people. So there's, of course, the Marxists would say there's free market capitalism and there's state capitalism. But of course, the Austrians would say that state capitalism is a contradiction, or they would say that it is something that does not lead to economic growth, it leads to economic destruction. So I would say that we have a mixed economy, and we have always had a mixed economy, and in some places and times there has been less centralized control. But in particular, we have never had a perfect money system of the kind that Ludwig von Mises imagined in theory, because back when we used gold, now there are a lot of advantages to gold, but it doesn't work on layer one like Bitcoin does. and we had this system of banknotes, and that's like the layer 2. That's like the Lightning Network, and these layer 2 solutions were open to exploitation and control by the issuers of the banknotes. And once we got off of gold, then it was like we had the banknotes, but we didn't have the gold anymore. So it was like BTC got destroyed, and there was only the Lightning Network left. I think that we have had times where there was more capitalism than usual in the past, but with a Bitcoin-based system, there's really an opportunity for more than we have seen at any previous time in history.
Would you consider then with Bitcoin, then these Austrian economics principles would be applied better, or would be like a perfect fit?
Well, Austrian economics applies to any situation. Certainly, if you interview Austrian economists, they're going to be free market capitalists, generally speaking, but that doesn't mean that the Austrian economics principles apply only to the free market. The reason that the Austrian economists tend to be pro-free market is when they apply their economics to systems with centralized control, their conclusion is they oppose that the system opposes growth, and it causes it fails. Mm-hmm. So but I think the Austrians would tend to think that this Bitcoin-based money would be a very good idea, whereas many of the mainstream economists would not. And of course, I would say that the reason they would oppose it is that their whole job is to support parasitism and to create arguments to make it sound like that's not what it is.
Okay, I see. So they will like this Bitcoin, these Austrian economists. Who are the 3 people who, in your opinion, are advancing Bitcoin the most to its adoption and its end goals, and why?
Well, definitely Craig Wright, and I don't know who else I would say. I guess Jack Liu, and from let's see. I mean, I haven't been really paying that much attention to what other people are doing, so it's kind of a hard question. Okay. But
then we have 2.
Well, maybe I'll just pick myself as the third one.
Yeah, this is a very good choice. Then and why do you think? Okay, so they are the ones doing the best, the most for advancing the Bitcoin, let's say, project, and why in particular, in a couple of sentences, why are they the best that can happen to Bitcoin?
Well, I don't. I think there's a lot of opportunity for new people to come in and do a lot better than any of those guys. So let's leave it at that. I think I think the unseen entrepreneurs are people that you shouldn't forget. So I'm looking forward to what they're going to do.
Oh, that's great.
But right now, I think what I would say is it's very difficult to accomplish anything. It's very difficult to move forward, and so what I would really like to see is more work being done to create services for entrepreneurs. I think right now it's kind of like I don't know. I just think it's very, very difficult. Well, so I think, one thing I would like is more of an open source community. So, right now, I would say people are trying to make a lot of complete services, when to me it seems like there's a really great need for tools, and that is not being served as well. Maybe because making the tool is perhaps not seen as potentially as profitable. But I would say that you can support your speculation on Bitcoin by creating things that makes entrepreneurship easier. So to me, that's what I would like people to be doing more. But far be it from me to tell people what to do with their own business.
It makes sense to have businessmen, entrepreneurs who enable other entrepreneurs to create the infrastructure so that they can, other people can also make business. Good.
Yeah.
Do you do any trading? And if so, what decentralized platforms do you use, if any, or would you recommend?
Well, no, I don't have a good answer to that. I used to use Bittrex, but then they went out of business, so I haven't actually figured out what my alternative is going to be at this point. So sorry, I don't have anything on that one. Do you have any recommendations for me to try?
DXS. DXS is based on the BSB, and then you can make trading based on chain, basically.
Really? Okay. Well, that's pretty interesting.
Have you tried DSX? It's amazing because it links to your Bitcoin wallet immediately. You obviously own the Bitcoins, and you place your trade, and you get instant payout when you close the position. It's the most fascinating trading experience I've ever had in my 30 years trading experience.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, yeah, I'll have to try it. I guess I must have heard of it.
We are making the next question is on the 11th of June of this year, when BSV was about $27, you wrote a tweet saying, "Sorry guys, if I had thought BSV would go this low, I would have warned you. I don't know where the bottom will be." Is BSV your worst trade ever so far? I mean, this is a very provocative question, but just okay.
Well, I will say I do not. No, it's definitely not my worst trade ever, because I bought into it when it was quite low in terms of dollars. So at 27, I'm not really down too much. But I've certainly had some very bad experiences in markets. But yeah, I mean, I just wrote that because I thought that I don't know. I mean, I just saw like I don't know. I thought
anyways,
you
got it as a fork. Therefore, if you got it for free, then it's not that bad as a trade. If you bought it at the bottom, yeah, not bad trade. But of course, the general trend was from the beginning. Okay, from let's say the average price, which was around 150 or 200, till now. Then obviously it was a very bad trade for many people. But okay, not.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But well, I just thought that I guessed that some people on Twitter were unhappy, but were not showing it. So that's why I wrote that.
Okay. Where do you see BSV in terms of price in the next years? You can pick up the time frame you want.
Okay, I have no idea. That's a very difficult question. Yeah, I don't think that trying to make price predictions is very good. There's no way to really know. Certainly, I will think that there will be a change in the trend. So far, looking at the recent breakout we had just now, it's not clear to me that it's going to continue upward from here, but maybe it will. And that's really all I got on that. I mean, it seems like, my problem with these markets is that I always think that people are really going to try to actually think about what they're doing, and then that just doesn't really happen. So it seems like there's a bunch of news coming out about Craig Wright and his patent, how he's going to try to get licenses from the developers of other chains, and he says he's going to be able to get licenses from everybody because all of the chains are copying him, and but it seems like people don't really believe that that's really going to happen. And so another thing I've seen is that we recently had the SEC sue Coinbase and Binance over trading securities that are unregistered, and of course now people are arguing about what is a security, and lots of people are still trying to say that Ethereum is not a security, even though it's pretty easy to tell that it is based on how the Howey test has been interpreted. So it seems like there's a lot of denial. Of course, I don't know what the whales are thinking because they don't just get on Twitter and and talk very much. So that's not necessarily a good sample. But as far as I can tell, people are really in denial, and they have always been in denial. And it's never like a scientific process where people are trying to figure out what's going on. The way that you make the most money in markets is figuring out things that have never happened before. But as far as I can tell, everybody in this market is only thinking about things that have happened before, and they're never thinking about things that have never happened before. So you just have to wait for it to happen, I guess.
That's a great thought, actually. And talking about all these events that could potentially influence the price of BSV, and we have upcoming the trial in which it will be decided whether Craig Wright can be considered as Satoshi Nakamoto. This trial will be in January 2024. Is it maybe the last or an only hope that BSV has to make some waves? Is it because thinking about the depression and how people are actually demotivated right now in the BSV camp, could it be maybe the only hope in their minds? And what do you think? What do you think about that?
Well, I certainly would prefer, in my perfect world, whether Craig Wright was Satoshi wouldn't matter to the markets, and what would matter is who is actually promoting economic growth. But certainly we've seen in the past that the results of these court cases can have a big effect on the price, at least in the short term. But I'm certainly not. Well, I mean, that would be quite a serious problem if the jury said that Craig Wright is not Satoshi Nakamoto, because that would be bad for all of his other court cases that he's working on. Well, not all of them, but many of them, and that would also that would make it more difficult to extract some of these licenses that he's trying to get from the other chains. And of course, not that I think that the legal system is all good, that I agree that everything that Craig is doing is good as far as how he uses the legal system and his ideas on rights. but what I do like is attacking the other chains. So to me, all of these different blockchains are in a they're in a zero-sum contest, and to me, the winner is the one that's going to do the best job at attacking the other chains, and the ones that are trying to live together peacefully are not going to do as well. And so yeah, that would be bad, because that would be a failure of an attack. But I don't know. I mean, I would say that doesn't sound like something that would is likely to fail to me. Well, I think it should be easy for Craig to convince the jury that he is Satoshi Nakamoto. And the reason I think that is because we know that Peter McCormick was originally saying that he was going to use the truth defense in his case with Craig, but then he dropped that as a way of preventing any of Craig Wright's evidence from getting in the public record. So that is a delaying tactic. I mean, he basically chose to lose the case because he didn't want to make a defense. And presumably that is because his backers would not pay for him to take the truth defense. So to me, that means that they thought the truth defense wasn't going to work. And of course, if it wasn't going to work, then that would also mean that they wouldn't want Craig Wright's evidence to come out. So it seems like they're doing delaying tactics to try to prevent his evidence from getting in the public record. And well, we'll see what they'll try to do this time. But I don't know. Maybe they'll just keep choosing to lose, so that there's never the evidence never gets in court.
Yeah, but, there is no other choice, and they have to. Craig Wright has to present his evidences. Now, all this trial is about whether or not Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto. They cannot do as in the case of McCormick, because I mean, although what you say is very interesting indeed, it's a sign that McCormick didn't want Craig Wright to present his evidences. So by abandoning this true defense, which is a sign in favor of Craig Wright, but now really these evidences have to be shown in this new trial.
Well, what about if Copa desists and drops the case?
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's possible that what could happen is that Craig Wright will never present his evidence in court, but then what that would mean is that he would just win all of his claims without anybody putting up a fight. So then he'll get all of his licenses, and he'll get everything he wants out of the core developers, and that will be good too, because that would also be a successful attack. And so yeah, and how they say the most interesting outcome is the most likely. So that's probably what'll happen.
That would be nice. We think you are a very wise economist and well educated. In 100 years from now, would you like to be remembered as an economist or as something else?
Well, definitely economist, but why wouldn't I want to also be remembered as something else? I mean, I would be happy to be remembered for anything. I mean, I certainly would hope that people will start getting better at economics in the future, because to me, we'll have a much better society with a lot less parasitism. But but that's for their own sake.
Okay, that's all from my side. We are very glad that you accepted our invitation. If you want to say something to end, as last sentence, now you can do it as a summary if you want of what you have to tell to the world.
Okay, well, I guess going back to economics, I would say to everybody in Bitcoin, just take some time off and read the classics, Bohm, Bovark, and Mises. And if you get through that, then you should read Hayek, Rothbard, and Jesus Huerta de Soto.
Ah, yes, Spanish guy, Jesus Huerta de
Yeah.
Soto.
Yes, he's the best modern Austrian, in my opinion. And so yeah, I mean, I think that'll make everything a lot better if everybody in the economy learns economics. So yeah, we can. It's okay to take a break. I think it'd be great if everybody just took a break for a couple of months and just read all those books, and then we'd be on the same page of that stuff.
Lovely. Okay. That's great. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for accepting our interview.
And see you next time.
Okay. See you. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Bye-bye.